So this is my speech. So I'll tell you the truth. I was planning to say something totally different, and then you guys came on stage, and I literally teared up. So you know, in my kind of work, I present to prime ministers and presidents and kings and queens, and I never get intimidated when I present. I have to tell you very openly, I have never been so anxious after what you guys said. I mean, this was so amazing, so touching. You're going to be the leaders of the future. I guarantee you that, right? So, as we were just saying on the table, I'm going to wing this. So if it doesn't come well written, it will come from the heart, and I really will tell you what I feel about this. So. I work at Google X as the Chief Business Officer of Google X. What you see in the market from Google X are crazy things like self-driving cars and Project Loon and all of those amazing innovations. What's behind them is that we are attempting to solve major problems that affect the lives of billions of people. And so to do that, we try to use an unusual approach to solve the problem. And back in January this year, I took a 6-month sabbatical, which is a very untraditional approval to get at Google nowadays. Google granted me 6 months sabbatical to work on my own moonshot. My own moonshot is to solve a major problem that affects the lives of billions of people. And believe it or not, the problem I'm trying to solve is unhappiness. And we live in a world that is unhappy, even though some of us have a lot of good things in our lives, a lot of good fortunes. Unhappiness is on the increase everywhere in the world. I mean, the antidepressant industry, believe it or not, is $18 billion in the US, right? And of course, many of you young ladies and young men who were on stage and up there will know that unhappiness causes violence. Those people that have hate or anger or ego in them so much that it pushes them to be violent, to be bullies, to be aggressive. I don't want to be idealistic, but I will tell you that happy people don't do that stuff, and that if we manage to make people happier, we will actually stop a lot of that in our world. And so I set out back in January to deliver on a mission that's called 10 million people happy. 10 million happy is what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to get 10 million people in the world to be happier, which is a very, very small target compared to the actual task, believe it or not. And to get 10 million people happy, I depended on the content that you have in the book in your hands, which I will beg you to read, especially the young men and women that are in this room. I apologize for all the distinguished, amazing, guests, who are here. I'm actually going to make my whole speech for the young men and ladies that spoke on stage. I'm just talking to you guys, right? And hence the T-shirt, by the way. So I'm trying to make 10 million people happy, and I'll tell you that we all. I'll come back to this at the end of my speech. We all get our share of hardships in life, okay? So I know that you've gone through a lot, but I can guarantee you every one of us goes through a lot. And what I will aim to do in just 7 minutes is to tell you that hardship is not a reason to be unhappy. As a matter of fact, if you get my point, it's a reason to be happy and to succeed in life, and I'll tell you exactly how to do that. So my story is very straightforward. I was very unhappy. I was very happy as a young man, and then I became very, very unhappy in my late 20s, and I had to read myself out of the problem. I can guarantee you I read everything that's available on the market about the topic of happiness. I attended every lecture. I watched every documentary. I couldn't get a single thing. I didn't understand, not a single word of what they were talking about, because I'm an engineer, I'm a mathematician, and I'm an executive. right? So my brain works in a certain way that is a lot more like the modern day brains, if you want. And so when someone told me to meditate or do yoga or whatever, I just said no. Like, you just have to explain it to me. So I actually tried to understand the problem of happiness as an engineer. And what do engineers do? We do not solve a problem until we define the problem statement extremely accurately. And then we find out how the machine works, what generates happiness, what generates unhappiness. And then we find out, why is the machine breaking? Which spare part needs to change? Is there something wrong with my operating system? Did somebody write a couple of lines of code that are wrong? Right? When I find those lines of code, I actually remove them in a repeatable way, in a scalable way, so that every time I feel unhappy, I can run a few lines of code in my head and find happiness again. Now, when I thought of the problem this way, believe it or not, it worked. So after 9 years of research, I found a way to be able to be happy all the time. Of course, no one is happy all the time. I get those glimpses of unhappiness, but I can return myself to that state of happiness, regardless of how harsh life is, within hours, at most within days. Now, that model, unfortunately, was put to the ultimate test when my son, who also was my mentor, I've been blessed with, if you know Chinese, ancient beliefs, I've been blessed with the yin and yang of life. In my life, I was given a boy and a girl, a daughter and a son, that were truly all of what life is all about. My son Ali was that little Zen monk. Like, literally, he was 1 year old and he was just sitting there almost in his orange robe, if you want. Okay? Zen and peaceful and always happy. And then my daughter Aya was the energy, the sunshine, the fun, right? She was the one that took us out and made us enjoy life. Between those two, I worked so hard with my engineer's mind to find the model. But they told me, yes, Papa, that works. Or yes, this, is what happiness is all about, because by being children, they were happy. They knew what happiness is, which is what I lost. Unfortunately, Ali, who was my mentor, who was my coach, not only my son, who was also my best friend, passed away in 2014. He left our life because of a medical error, in the simplest of all surgical operations. And within 4 hours from having my son over, I hugged him for the last time before he went into the operating room. I will tell you, it was the highlight of my life, the high point, because he was handsome, he was tall, he was peaceful, he was loving, he was wonderful in every way. I was super proud, and then 4 hours later he left. The thing is, we were not unhappy. Surprisingly, as a family, with that amount of hardship of losing your son, your best friend, your coach, your mentor, to a human error at his prime, unexpectedly, we did not close our rooms and cry. As a matter of fact, when people came to his memorial, we would be the ones hugging them and saying, hey, it's okay. Let's explain to you our model of happiness, and then they would feel happy again. So everyone told me, you have to write this down, and the book that you see here is the result of that. The book basically gives you a few principles that are very important. The first and most important one of them is that we are all born happy. If you remember when you were a little child, 8 months old, you did not need an Xbox to be happy. You didn't need anyone to say something nice about your hair to be happy. All you needed was yourself, and you were happy. Then the modern world takes us out of happiness in a very predictable way. As a matter of fact, the book is based on an equation, and the equation basically tells you that that your happiness is not about what the world gives you. It is about what you think, the way you think of what the world gives you. Let me give you an example of that. When my son died, I could tell myself I should have driven him to another hospital. I failed as a father. I will never see him again, and life will be very harsh. All of these were possible options. Those options would lead to nothing but me crying for the rest of my life. They would make no difference to the real world, and they would not bring Ali back. This is how we react to hardship. When we get hardship, if we get into that corner, We can be unhappy for 25 years and we will not make any progress. We will not go forward. You understand that? On the other hand, I could tell myself, you know what, I'm going to document what my son taught me, I'm going to put it in a book, I'm going to share it with the world, and I'm going to make 10 million people happy. This is also not going to bring Ali back, but it's going to make our world today a little better than it was yesterday. And that's what I ask every one of you when you go through hardship, to go through that thinking process of how you can make your lives better today than it was yesterday, and after, tomorrow than it is today. Just for you to understand, unhappiness truly is just a survival mechanism. It's your brain going through the equation that you will see in that book, analyzing everything around you and telling you, hey, something's wrong. You should stop eating your salad and pay attention to this, right? And when your brain does that, it gives you those negative emotions because it wants you to stop and pay attention. And that's okay. Pain is good. Pain makes us better, makes us survive, right? The problem is, how do we react when our brains tell us that? Do we sit down and crash, or do we actually persevere and become better in life? Now, I'm talking to the young people in the room. I apologize for the older ones, but I learned my model of happiness from my son, so I'm going to summarize it to you in one concept, right? Life truly is a video game. Think of it this way. It is exactly what you do in a video game. Video games are difficult. That's not a mistake in the game. This is not a bad design from the game designer. This is what the game is all about. I played a ton of video games with Ali. Our favorite game was Halo. When we play Halo, we're that Master Chief, the commander that goes out on a planet, and aliens would thrash us. They would shoot at us, squish us, drive over us. We would fall in lava, right? We would, be shouted at, beaten up, and we would absolutely love every minute of it. You understand that? When I played, I would run to the end of the game. Ali would tell me, Papa, where are you going? Let's go there where there are explosions and smoke. And I would go like, why, Ali? Why? The end of the game is here. And he would say, who wants to get to the end of the game? When you get to the end of the game, you stop playing, right? In his view, he would say, the tough parts are where all the fun is. This is where you develop and grow. This is where you become a better gamer. You understand that? For the young people in the room, your purpose in life is to become the absolute best gamer you can ever be. And how does life teach you to be that? It simply puts you through the tough challenges. When you get a tough challenge in a video game, do you put the controller down and complain? Do you send an email to Bungie and say, Halo is too difficult? That's not what you do. What do gamers do? Gamers engage. When life becomes tough, they try again, right? They understand that this is good for them, and they do it better and better and better. Not to win the game, but to become the best gamers you can be. While you do that, you have fun. You enjoy life, because you know what? Your happiness is not about how difficult the game is. Your happiness is about how you engage in the game. I cannot summarize the whole book for you in 10 minutes, but I want you to really understand one thing. Your unhappiness is not a prerequisite to your success in life. I told you, every one of you that spoke today here, I absolutely think you're going to become world leaders. I truly am not saying that as a compliment. I recruit talent for a living. That's what I do as a senior manager, right? All you have to do is to know how to use your talents to get to where you should be. And that's by engaging and changing your own life, then changing the lives of people around you. So I'm going to ask you to do me one favor. Read this, write me an email. I'm mo@solveforhappy.com, okay? And make happiness your task for yourself and for people around you. If someone around you is violent, that's because they're unhappy. Let's find out why. If we can make them change their mind and see the beauty in their life, or at least see that their violence is not getting them anywhere, then perhaps we may have changed them. For that, you're going to help me get to the 10 million. So my target is 10 million, yours and yours is 1 million each, 1 million happy people, okay? Good, thank you so much. Be happy, and I'm around here.